Hi, Nedra. It's so good to talk to you.
Hey Mary, thanks for inviting me to.
I'm super glad to have you on here. You were actually one of my very, very first business buddies when I moved to this area. You had this banging networking group. It was right on the eve of COVID, and then COVID
I
happened.
remember. Yeah, yeah, that was a wild time.
Yeah. Well, I'm super glad we're getting together today because you and I were having an offline conversation about highly sensitive persons because I had brought it up in my newsletter again, and we've been keeping in touch all these years now. And you were like, guess what? I've been working with HSPs too. And so we wanted to record a conversation to bring it online so other people could hear what we're talking about too, which I think is super valuable. And I was having this thought before we recorded. I'm just going to go right into it. I have noticed lately, and I wondered if you had noticed the same thing, that a lot of the HSPs that I seem to work with who sort of float around in my world, I don't know if this is a function of being super empathic, super highly sensitive, they tend to be like waffling on making decisions right now. Like it seems like sensory overload, like it's a lot. And I wondered, are you seeing the same thing? Because I'm on the system side, you're on the marketing side. And I just wondered, like, how do you see that show up, if at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I mean, I feel like you just described me right now. I feel like I'm kind of like, ooh, what's this? And like trying to make decisions and it's summertime, so it's a different season for me than others. But I feel like there's just a lot of change going on in the world and everything, and it makes it hard to settle and focus at the moment. I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think that that's super true. Um, I feel like, well, I've been coaching people in my boxer space lately, and I have discovered by helping them that I have hacked my system many, many times to help myself get through things. And as an HSP, like I do have my moments of waffling, but I think I have found ways to hack my system to like get the energy flowing where I don't feel like I'm just sort of running around in a circle. Um,
Yeah,
without making a decision. It's sort of like those shit or get off the pot moments. It's like I've got to do
yeah,
something at some point because the unfortunate reality is that the world around us continues to march forward, and the longer you just stay in your little HSP circle, then sometimes
hmm
opportunities will pass us by, or sometimes like it's just not as like the time's just not as ripe for things.
hmm
That has happened with me in the last year. I've noticed that too, just because of sensory overload. It's just there's so much going on in
yeah.
this world. Like
I
some days,
know.
some days.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious what your hacks are. Like, yeah, at least one thing that I have learned through other resources. I don't know if you know, is it Julie Bajellan? She has a great community and webinars. And one of the things that she's always said about HSPs and it's true for me is when you get overloaded, you go outside and be in nature. Like that's when you need to just like unplug and
Mhm.
I actually did that yesterday after just like being in front of the computer for hours, and I actually could think clearly. It was really helpful to kind of, just hear what was going on in my brain and kind of parse out how I really felt about things.
I totally agree. I started getting out into forest bathing, hiking. I treated myself to a really nice pair of hiking boots. Finally, I was due for a new pair last year, and me and my trusty Merrills, we have headed out in my raincoat in the fall. Everything like I'll go out all weather unless it's truly horrible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there is something about, and I think there's studies too about just being under like a canopy of trees, even if you're
hmm
not a highly sensitive person, just in general as humans, we need that. It does something for us. And I think too, it also helps with sort of like breaking the state. Like I
hmm
my hacks are always around like how do I break state? I mean, the first thing is like becoming aware that I'm running around in a circle.
Yeah.
And sometimes I catch it sooner than other times. But as soon as I notice it, my goal is always to break state. And I'm like, how do I break state? And
hmm
it could be just a change in whatever I'm working on and like stop trying to do the darn thing over and over, or
hmm
a walk, or I don't know. Usually it's something crafty. I'm a crafty person,
Yeah.
you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah, it's like someone described me with, it's like we have these weather patterns, and in our emotions sometimes. And yeah, if you can change kind of like the what you're doing, or get yourself into a different state, then it will change the weather patterns. Because maybe you're feeling really overwhelmed or anxious, and if you can go outside, or yeah, do something that kind of immerses yourself. I like building Legos. There's like, like the flower Legos back there. That's
I
like
love
one of
it.
my ways to decompress. And but that will definitely at least kind of change your thinking patterns, and calm your mind, and usually helps you get out of that mode a bit.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Um, I would, so funny. Like we dove into this conversation. I gave you no prep. But I'm like, when you asked, you're like, I wonder how you hack your system. And I was like, gee, I wonder how I hack my system too, but I do. Um,
Yeah.
I, I, I recently redid time blocks on my calendar, and I'm wondering how time functions for you and your people.
Hmm.
It tends to be like one of the hottest topics with all of my
Hmm.
folks. And
Yeah.
being a business owner, one of the benefits is that you're supposed to be able to control your time. But getting to that state of actually controlling your time is actually kind of a skill and an art form, and takes a lot of boundaries.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
I've recently instituted this thing where, even though they say, you shouldn't, check your social, check your email first thing in the morning, I am somebody who will do those kinds of administrative things first to
Hmm.
start my workday. But I've started getting up just a smidge earlier and spending time with me and my thoughts in my journal and a good cup of coffee. And that seems to be doing an awful lot of good. I'm sure some of it is nervous system regulation too, but
Hmm.
which is important. But I wonder, like, because you're in the marketing world and you've got this amazing marketing focus day thing that we'll talk about in a minute.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering, like, when you have your people in that room with you, how much does time factor in? Like, how many times do people say, like, I can't find the time, or I don't have enough time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. I think everybody. Well, that's the thing. Time is so precious, and I have a 13-year-old daughter, and it wasn't until I've seen someone grow up that I understand how time really is a very abstract thing that we don't understand until we age, and we're like, oh, okay, this is what it means. Oh my God, now, like, have I been wasting my time? Have I been using it? And sometimes we're just so hard on ourselves. We're almost too critical of it. We have to just kind of take the pressure off and be like, okay, what's really important? And I think just that's really it. So for me, I find that I think it's really about finding when your peak times are, and I think that as a business owner, that's the first thing to try to experiment with. And so for
Yeah.
me, even though I'm in denial of it, sometimes morning's usually the best. And so if I'm going to write, that's my time to write. Like I better just do that then, or I'm in trouble. That when with my community, I think people are waking up to the idea that they have to kind of what's the word? Just like put like a protective blanket around their time, like in their calendar. And that is hard when you're trying to, like you have different kinds of businesses where you're really having to work with clients a lot, and you feel guilty about taking 1 hour to do your own administrative marketing, whatever. And I think people are really struggling with that. And but it's so important to do that, because otherwise you collapse, and then you're trying to keep up with your clients, you're trying to keep with your business, and there's usually like a fallout point where there's burnout, and that's not pretty.
Burnout is so not pretty. I burned out so hard at the end of COVID. I made bank. It was awesome. And then I burned out
Yeah.
so hard. Um, yeah, I'm really like, I'm thinking about this time thing, and I feel like time is so much, if it was a type of currency, it's an energetic currency. And
Hmm.
like for highly sensitive persons, I feel like time is a really important ingredient in the kitchen to be mindful of. Like I feel like it can give you the symptoms that you need to witness to know about like how your energy is doing, and whether you're hitting points of burnout, or if you actually have more capacity than you sometimes give yourself credit, or whatever. I Like I feel like there's something around like the time buffers that is needed when you're an HSP. You need more buffer time. Maybe that's it. You need more buffer
Yeah,
time.
yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I've gotten into a habit where I pad time between things, so I have downtime because yeah, I think well, pre-COVID I didn't do that very well, and then I had all this more downtime. I'm like, oh, well, life's a lot better. This is what I should do, and try not to just jam a bunch of stuff in one day. And and also I think boundary setting was something as an HSP is vital. And I didn't understand that until I took a class in it. And then I was just like, oh, this is what it means. It's really uncomfortable, but it gets
Yeah.
easier the more you do it. It's like a muscle. You have to work it and
Yeah.
practice it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all like continually on a practice plan.
Yeah, this week I've had to really use some boundary setting muscles that has been really uncomfortable, but I think we're succeeding. So,
Yeah. I've had that feeling lately too, where I'm like, man, I had to say no to a lot of things.
hmm
Um, I don't have the same yes capacity that other people do. It doesn't mean that my productivity is less. Like I still pump out a heck of a lot
Yeah.
of things, but I can't say yes to everything. And I've gotten maybe it's also just aging, you know.
hmm
And but like as the older I get, I start to realize that no, I don't want to do all those things. I don't feel so pulled by FOMO. And it's like
hmm
there's just a certain capacity on peopling that I can handle, not because I don't love all the people, but because it's like I don't have enough to hang after a certain point, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
hmm
it's and I like okay, so we're recording this. It's July 2024. We're just ramping up into the height of an election season, and like there is a
Yeah.
lot of really stressful energy. And I bookmarked an article to put in my newsletter for this weekend about studies that people are doing actively right now on anxiety levels among people, whether or not you tune into the news or whatever, but
hmm
collectively, like our culture, our society is very anxious and stressed out right now. And when you're an HSP, you feel those things from other people. Like you have your own feelings too, but you're sensitive to how other
Yeah.
people are feeling. You walk in a room, you feel how they feel. You walk into a Zoom room, you can feel the group on Zoom, even though they're not in your home office room with you. And like that's exhausting to kind of manage that at the same time as trying to do your business activities. And I just think it kind of lends itself to being a bit more picky about, where you choose to spend your time and who you choose
hmm
to, integrate with in business. But I wondered if you had noticed that too,
hmm
because I have really noticed that in the last couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. I'm having flashbacks to 2017, unfortunately, because that was a really rough year. And of adjusting and energy. And I think that was the year I realized that I really need to stop watching the news, like and
Yeah.
also just really protect my media. Like I think as a HSP, it was really hard for me to admit that I shouldn't be watching things like Game of Thrones and anything that's so violent or just I have to be like I've set up rules like I have and it's funny with my husband, it's like that's NFN. That's not for Nedra, like, and so it helps my family like understand, like, don't play that around me. Don't show me. I don't, nope, not for me. Nope, nope. And it helps me put boundaries on things and not feel guilty or weird because like it's really detrimental to my brain, like I
Mhm.
have pretty good boundaries and like and even with friends, I'll be like, that's NFN, and they just laugh, and I'm like, it's really is, and like, okay.
I
But
love that.
yeah, I think at least for me, especially, anything visual is just very sensitive. Like I have to be super careful. Like I don't know about your brain, Mary, but anything that's like visual just stays in there and doesn't go anywhere. It just will just linger. So if I
Yeah.
read words, that's I can intake a lot of information that way, and it's pretty safe. But
Yeah.
video and images, oh boy, we got to be careful. So
Actually, for me, it's auditory. So visual, like
oh,
yes,
interesting.
but
Yeah,
like I'm a well, you know me, you've known me. I'm a TV junkie.
yeah,
Like I watch everything, and I do,
yeah.
and I'm like totally into House of the Dragon right now. And it is violent, and there are things where I'm like,
Sure.
things will kind of linger. And maybe it's also partly a function of having worked in the entertainment industry where it's like you see how the sausage is
Hmm.
made and you're
Yeah.
you don't fall into the things quite so much. Like I hear about other people and they're just like so immersed in their show. And I'm like, I mean, I'm immersed, but
Hmm.
not that immersed. And
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about like the crew and where they're filming,
Oh,
like all
that's
the things.
great. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like that's a little different, but auditory things, it's kind of like I do have a really hard time with horror movies, and I know someone who knows the producer of the Saw films, and I was like, I don't know how
Yeah.
people can sit through those movies and it's so much, but if you have like really intense things, I learned this a long time ago, if you put it on mute and you continue
Hmm.
to watch it, the impact is much less. And I've
Yeah.
and I've noticed that like if I have the reason why then like watching the news as opposed to reading headlines is different for me is because the
Hmm.
newscaster, as much as I love my news anchors, they're talking to me just like a podcast. It's like it's in my ear and it sticks
Hmm.
with me more. The spoken words stick with me more.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
I kind of can't let sort of the compounding stress of news information sort of
Yeah.
like it kind of eats away at me that way. So, and same
Sure.
thing's true of like just noisy environments. I never did well in the 9 to 5 office because
Oh,
usually
yeah.
they're like pretty noisy. I had a pretty quiet
Hmm.
office when I worked at Disney, thank God. But then I went to work for a marketing firm that did infomercials and it was like a bullpen. It was so loud in there. And I just remember
Hmm.
feeling like I was dying every day because it was so loud.
Yeah.
And there's just something about like, and if somebody, would get kind of angry because they're working on a project, you hear them like not agreeing on something, like that starts to like, I'm like, oh God.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and so it'll
Yeah.
wear me down. So I find like that sensory thing kind of, has more
Hmm.
impact
Yeah.
than sort of entertainment. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I think it's so interesting for people like us to get together and talk about what we
Yeah.
experience because they think it's important for other HSPs to know that like your experience is valid. It's going to be unique. And learning how to navigate it too is super important.
Yeah, I feel like this is great because I don't get a chance to talk about this very often, and I don't really have. I think I've met more people that identify with HSP in business and colleagues, through business owners than I have my other friends. Like they just are, I think I have a lot of introverted friends, but I don't know if they're so much HSP. Like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, it's the NFN thing, okay, so.
Yeah.
But it's really helpful because just to not judge yourself. I think for many years, I don't know about you, Mary, but I judged myself so hard and was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I watch these things? Why can't I? And then finally I just was like, no, this is not good for my brain. I need to take care of myself. I need to protect
Yeah.
me, And so I finally flipped a switch and was like, this is all about saving, going back to energy and time. This is about preserving my brain and making it like the most happy, like not so much productive, but like, like in a calm state so I can actually do work and do great work.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to. And that's
Yeah.
when I finally, started like putting, kind of setting things down and removing all of that, like and made some other changes too. I was like, wow, my brain's a lot happier. I can have thoughts. I have ideas for content. I can write things. And it was just, yeah, it was just like a game changer.
It is nervous system regulation has been my new favorite thing. I've been doing somatic therapy now for like 2 years.
Hmm.
And holy crap, it changed things. Like I have changed so many things regulating all kinds of nervous system responses in my body. And you don't realize how much these symptoms show up. And it's like, oh no, I'm not imagining it. Like that is a for real
Yeah.
feeling. I'm allowed to feel that. But what am I going to do about it? Otherwise I end up sort of running around in the circle being even more uncomfortable and just reworking the uncomfortableness again and
Hmm.
again. Yeah, I think too, just like patience with the self. I really love that you put it that way too. I have to do that with myself so many times. Like I'm noticing now, like when I'm in a vulnerable state, like I start to flush like I'm flushing now, and I'm just like, ah, fuck it, like it's gonna happen.
We all
Just
have
with
different
yourself.
versions of it, though. You're
Yeah.
so not alone. I mean, when I get vulnerable, my stomach's the first thing that's just like, okay, things are wrong, things aren't good. Because my stomach will never lie. Yeah,
Yeah.
we all have different versions of it. It's some
It,
are just not, or just more hidden, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And I think that I think the more that people realize that they don't have to continue to mask and pretend, that in our business spaces, especially, I think people like you and me who hold space for other people, the people who come into our spaces will start to realize like it's okay to be like, you know what, I'm like noticing this thing today and I kind of don't know what to do about it, because it's the barrier stopping that person from taking action on, say, making their social media posts like you're helping them do, or in my case, like having them, create those email filters to automate some systems so that they don't have this cluttered inbox that's just making it harder to get into their day every day. And
Hmm.
and I think that, a lot of times we get fed so much information in the entrepreneurial community that it's, you're supposed to operate like this. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like that formula works for that bro dude, but like this isn't the way everybody operates. And
Hmm.
and I have always felt, because I've been in the tech side of things, I've always felt that everything is terribly emotional. And we can remove the emotions from a business process and forget to realize that, like, actually there's a lot of feelings wrapped up in that. And
Yeah.
and like as an HSP, you're going to be feeling your feelings and everyone else's feelings on the team. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Um, oh, this is so good. What would you say is one of the sort of best pep talks you might give to somebody who's highly sensitive and they're watching us digest this and they're like, maybe tis I. Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah. Well, I think what it boils down to especially from like as an HSP business owner, is relationships. And I feel like that's one of the things you can invest in, and it's going to have a good return. I call it ROR, return on relationship, not ROI, because ROI, that's an outdated term. I feel like we got some ROR going on here.
Yeah.
And, because we are so in tune, you're going to be really good at building relationships. And so it's all about finding a system that helps you do that and maintain them. And that's something I've been studying, and I've actually been taking a course on it this last year, and reading books. And there's a lot of great ways to do it that are very creative, that lean itself into people like us, that play on our strengths, like whether it be like, I love, I mean, I love handwriting cards. Like I love sending cards to the mail. I like getting them, but I like sending them even
Mhm.
more. And I think that's a great way to connect with people, because I don't know about you, Mary, but I'll send people a card and they're like, I still have your card. You said that 2 years ago and you
Yeah.
said this. I'm like, awesome. I'm glad that you remember it. I put my emotions in there.
Yeah.
It was a heartfelt card.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's different ways, and to really build on that relationship, and you don't want to be doing it alone. Like, that's also the thing part about business.
Mhm.
If you look at all the successful business owners in the world, it's always because they were surrounded by like-minded colleagues that support each other.
Yeah.
You don't. This is not a solo act.
Yeah.
You're gonna sorely be surprised and be lonely and have more failures when you're doing that. It's much easier to have a community and people that are rooting for you and helping you solve problems, and you're doing the same for them.
Uh, plus one on that hardcore. I was reminded of something that I did many, many moons ago, and I continue to do to this day, and it's relationship audits. They're really
Oh, I like,
they're
okay.
hard to do because you sit down and
Yeah.
it's very private, nobody else is watching you.
Hmm.
But to really examine, who do I associate with? Like, what is I love the ROR, by the way. What is
Yeah.
the ROR on this? Like, because a lot of
Hmm.
times I find HSPs, I know I'm so guilty of this because we're trying to make ourselves comfortable. We'll pour more energy into something that is not
Hmm.
comfortable. And when you do the relationship audits, you realize, like, oh, they're not so amazing. I do things and then I feel like they're amazing in return. But when you reserve some more energy for yourself, you realize that, maybe the ROR is a little less. And maybe like over here, there's this other relationship where it's like, what if I fostered that a little bit more? Like what would happen?
Hmm.
And it will change a lot of things and it will produce some boundary shifts. But
Hmm.
I find that for HSPs, like it can be a difficult exercise, but incredibly useful because so many times I've heard from HSPs, they're like, I feel like I should be hanging out with that group or doing things with that person. And they're just drained all the time. And I'm like, why
Oh
are you
yeah.
drained? Why,
Yeah.
what's going on there? And sometimes you don't have words for all of it, but doing the audit and validating how you feel about the interaction, I think is valuable. It's really, really fucking hard.
It is, but I'm glad you brought that up because you shouldn't, yeah, you don't want to like spread all your energy to the point where, yeah, you're exhausted and it's not, it's not productive and you're not hanging with people that are like-minded or they understand you or, you know what I mean? Like there's like, yeah, I think you
Yeah.
were saying earlier, like wanting to be part of these different groups or feeling like you're obligated.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, that's a common feeling that you really got to look at what's important here and ask yourself, am I feeling okay? Here's kind of a litmus test for me. Like, do I feel more energetic after being with this
Yes.
person or this group? And
Yes.
and usually I get a pretty loud response from myself, either way.
Yeah.
And okay, there's your answer. Luckily, I think as HSP, you can sometimes it's almost so loud and clear. You're like, whoa, okay, I gotta just like sit on this for a minute. It's sometimes it's you have to just be willing to tune into yourself and be willing to listen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, okay. I'm gonna end us on that note because I think we like covered the high points. Um, but what I really want to do is make sure that everyone knows how they can get in touch with you and with me. I have all the information in the show notes attached to this video. And for people watching, my invitation is just subscribe for free to my Saturday newsletter. We've got a free tarot and Akashic reading for business. It goes out every week. And that information will be below the show notes. But to give you the floor for a minute, would you like to tell us about marketing focus days?
Yeah, it's something that I've been doing for about a year, and it came about because I've heard so many of my community and clients saying that they don't have time to do their marketing. So this is a this is a really unique workshop where it have a couple different elements going on. So first off, we do a reflection piece where we think back on the last month, what our wins, what were our challenges, and then you get a chance to meet people. So there's a community building aspect, and there's usually a breakout room where you can meet other like-minded business owners. Usually I do some kind of training last week I did it, and it was on LinkedIn for HSPs, introverts, and I think it was really helpful. But then the best part, I think is the sweetest part is usually a 30 to 20-minute window of time where we're on Zoom, but we turn our audio and our cameras off and we focus on our business. And it's not time to look at social media. It's not time to look at your phone. It's not time to read your emails. It's actually a time to write and be productive and do something that's for your business, not for your clients.
Yeah,
And then we come back and talk about what we did, and it's very eye-opening what people do. And I think there's that accountability piece that gets people very excited and they feel energized. And usually it's something maybe they've been putting off or maybe they've been avoiding, and we give them this opportunity to do it. And then it grows from there. And people have come and they've taken off with these different marketing activities that have really grown into very productive, um, very lucrative options for them. So it's been great.
I love it. You've been doing it for a while. I've been watching you grow with it, and like it's so valuable. And yeah, I hope people pile into those. All of this that we've both talked about is all free. It's a great way to get a taster. So I'm going to encourage everybody to sign up with you and sign up with me, and then we'll see you in your respective places. But I'm so glad we got together, Nedra. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and reaching out to talk about highly sensitive persons. It was time to have the biz buddy discussion.
Yeah, yeah, this has been wonderful. I feel like I got a lot out of it. It's just nice to talk about like what it's really like to be an HSP.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe not the last time.